National Fishermen and Pacific Marine Expo are proud supporters of the Galley Stories podcast, as we make similar efforts to highlight the people and topics that define commercial fishing. You can see what that looks like in print and online all year long, as well as every November in Seattle, when this community comes together at PME. Check out nationalfisherman.com and pacificmarineexpo.com to learn more.
Hello and welcome to Galley Stories, stories of the Bering Sea and beyond, hosted by Mark Kaler. My name is Penka Jane, podcast deckhand and longtime listener. We'd thank you to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Here's today's catch.
Hello and welcome back to Galley Stories, Stories of Bering Sea and Beyond. I am your host, Mark Kaler. Today we've got, I won't say an old friend because we've never talked very much other than texted back and forth for years. So lots of communication, but David Alan Arnold this is going to be a little bit more on the beyond side, guys, because a lot of his background is not going to involve the ocean. However, the last 20 years does involve the ocean. Some of you might recognize his name. He's also known as Airborne Cameraman on Instagram. I think that's right, David. Is that right? Airborne Cameraman, right?
Yes, on Instagram, Airborne Camera.
Airborne Camera. Okay. And six-time Emmy Award winner, two-time author, acclaimed author, if I'm going to say it right, because I've read both books and enjoyed them. I'm going to be coming out with a third. But David, how are you today? And welcome to Galley Stories, man.
I'm very blessed and I'm incredibly honored to be on your show.
Thanks, man. So again, guys, a little bit different because his initial background is not going to involve the ocean, but that is just fine because we want to hear all about him. So, David, where were you born, and what got you into doing what you do now, which is aircraft? I guess assuming you do all kinds of aircraft, not just helicopters. But give us that journey.
Yeah, I came from Florida. So I was born in St. Petersburg, and when I was about 5 years old, I had this very strange experience. I was waiting for my mom uh, to come home from work. So, being a toddler, I had my hands on the bars of the crib, like a prisoner, and I'm just staring. I'm just staring out the window, locked on the driveway, just waiting to see her car when she drives in, coming home from work. And I had this weird sensation of floating out of the crib, and I tried to hold myself down, but I couldn't. I was like powerless, and I was pulled up out of the crib, out the window, and over the roof, and that's the last thing I remember. And so uh, many years later, I wound up working in the helicopter business and running cameras on helicopters. So in a strange way, I kind of came full circle, and I began flying and floating over the earth uh, with a camera for TV shows and movies. And so that's been my career is flying around the country, around the world, maintaining and operating cameras, filming things from the sky. And that includes Deadliest Catch. When I got a call, by then I lived in Hollywood, and got a call and they said, "Hey, Dave, we want you to go and go up to Alaska and fly over these crab fishermen." And I thought, "Ooh, that sounds kind of dangerous."
And it is, and it was.
Yep.
You just brushed through that introductory really quickly. I want to go back because I've read the book, right?
Okay.
So I want to go back to some of those early stages,
Oh, okay.
because you didn't just jump into the helicopter and start filming. There was some
That's
other
very true.
experiences there, some experiences that are great to read about. So don't give them all of them away. Let's let some of our listeners get your book and get after it. But there's some pretty interesting stories there pretty early on.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because when I started to write the book, I felt very strongly that I wanted kids today to learn a little bit of how I entered the world of work in some way that might help them. Because I didn't graduate from college. I'm high school educated. And I, when I was in 11th grade in high school, I decided I wanted to work in TV and movies. And I could not
And
have done.
not in front of the camera. It was always going to be behind the camera, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell stories. I wanted to be a part of the storytelling process that I saw in the movie theater and on TV. And I was as far as you could get from the Hollywood movie business. I was in Florida, and there just really was no path forward for me to, follow my dream and start working on TV shows and movies. But I didn't let that stop me. I didn't even let it slow me down. I just started going door to door to any company that had anything to do with film or television. And because back then we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have TikTok. The only way that you could tell a story and share it with other people, millions of people in mass media, was on television or in the movies. And so back in those days, we didn't even have Google. So I took out the phone book, which was about uh, almost 4 inches thick, and I opened it to the yellow pages, which has the business phone numbers. And I just went and I found any listing for any company that had anything to do with film or television. I mean, it could be a local cable television station, it could be anything. And I would just show up. I didn't send them a resume. I just walked in their door and said, "Hey, how can I help you?" And that was I got a lot of interesting reactions from that. But I just felt like these guys have some tiny piece of my dream. And so if I want to get what I want, I'm going to help them. I'm going to find some way to help them. And so that's what I would just stop by. Hey, it's me again. Remember me?
You know
I
what? It
was,
sounds exactly like walking the docks to get on your
yeah, I
first
think
boat.
so. I think
It's
so.
exactly the same thing. Exactly
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah. So I would just show up and I would offer to work for free. I didn't, in other words, I wasn't asking them to commit to put me on salary or anything. I just basically volunteered. I just said, "What can I do to help you out? I'm just going to start helping you." And one of the companies, and I did get quite a bit of work that way. And one of the companies that I used to visit all the time, the poor guy at the front desk, he was just so fed up because I kept showing up, and I don't work there, but I kept showing up to work. And one day he just had it, and he said, "Hey, will you just quit coming around here? We have no use for you." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." And he said, "All we do are helicopter cameras." And he just looked at me like, "What are you going to do with a helicopter camera?" I said, "Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I won't." I scratched them off my list. And I said, "Okay, I won't bother those guys again." And then about 3 weeks later, the vice president of that company, so this would be behind the guy at the front desk, all the way down to the end of the hall, and then a left turn to the big office, which I could never get to.
You didn't make it past the desk, right?
I couldn't get past the front desk, and the front desk guy told me to get lost. And so, out of the blue, the big boss at this company called me.
What?
And yeah, and we had a really odd conversation. I was like a puzzle to him. And he said, "Do you make a living doing this thing that you're doing? You're just, walking around offering to work for people." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "Well," he goes, one of our guys just quit and we didn't know this was coming. It just got thrown in my lap and I'm supposed to hire a replacement for him." And he said, "I'm supposed to hire someone with a big, you know, resume from Hollywood or the New York movie film industry." And he said, "But I think you should come in and interview." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll come in." And so, I mean, you got to understand this. There's no social media back then. So only thing I knew was what was written on the wall, which was the CRM group. I didn't know that, in this little brick building, in this little town that I lived in, that this company, unbeknownst to me, was working on all of the biggest TV shows and movies. And
Wow,
here
wow,
I was
wow.
I was just trying to find work, working for local commercials, for a sandwich shop or something. And here this one company that told me to get lost, then they called me and told me what they actually do. And it's not what it says on the wall out front. It's not what it says on the sign. They actually work on all of the biggest TV shows and movies. Um, and it's just one thing after another. The one week they're going to do the World Series, and then the next week they're going to do a Steven Spielberg movie, and then the next week they're going to do the Olympics. You know, they're just which is why their guys were getting kind of tired and burned out. It was a lot of work and no rest in between, and so this guy, just like I'm out of here, I quit. And so this big boss calls me in. And we have a very funny interview. I mean, it basically he didn't laugh at me, but he definitely let me know. He said, um, your supervisor would never hire you because you have no technical skills. And he said, but it's not his decision, it's mine.
Okay, okay.
I know. So I'm listening, and he's telling me, he goes, I'm supposed to hire someone from Hollywood or New York to go and fly in helicopters with. They had a proprietary. They were the first company to gyro stabilize cameras for TV shows and movies, and that's why they were in such demand for all of the biggest TV shows and all of the biggest movies. They wanted this company called Westcam to bring their military gimbals, which were huge, just 36-inch diameter balls with either a television or a movie camera and a big lens stabilized to go onto a helicopter. Because before that, all we had were shaky helicopter images. We
Yeah,
didn't have
I
we didn't
just got
have
to say
drones.
here, if you guys follow him on Instagram, you'll see you have these quite often in your videos, or I've seen them several times in your videos. The camera system coming down and how it's stabilized, but also you'll also see, just trying to plug your Instagram here a little bit, David, but you'll also see that you're living that lifestyle because I've seen you at a football stadium one day. I've seen you flying over a military plane on the next. I mean, just all you're always doing something different.
Yeah, I think that unbeknownst to me, I think this company was really overworked. And I think the guys were getting stressed out and they were just on this never-ending grind. I mean, around the clock. They weren't getting sleep. They had to rush to the next big TV show or movie. This company and these new gyro stabilized cameras. We didn't have drones. Only way to get a shot from the air was to be in a helicopter, and these were the first TV and movie cameras that didn't shake. And so they were highly in demand. And so in hindsight, I can look back and I can say, well, this makes sense now. Like the reason that I got offered such a big break in the TV and movie industry was because I kept showing up for work and they weren't paying me. I didn't work there. And at a time when the guys are getting really, burned out and exasperated and frustrated, here's this kid who is just begging to get a chance to do anything.
So when you
Anything.
when you got that, when he actually gave you the spot, did you already have a little bit of knowledge from hanging around there a while, or were you just kind
No.
of going
No,
in? I mean, how did that fall into place?
well, it was interesting. I had this dream of working on TV shows and movies, but to be honest with you, aviation and small aircraft looked kind of sketchy to me back then. I just figured these little airplanes and helicopters that people fly in were kind of rickety, and sometimes they have problems, and you fall out of the sky. And I didn't have any interest in that, but I was so hungry that it almost like it didn't matter. When he called and said, "Hey, I want you to interview for this job," I my answer was yes. And I had no idea what the job was. When I found out they fly on helicopters, uh, I thought, "Oh, that's well, okay." I I I just blew right past the danger of it. And so he left me kind of hanging, and in a sense, like I think he knew that he was had a big responsibility to his company, and he was supposed to hire somebody with credentials that the rest of the company would feel good about, you know.
Mm.
And so he sort of said, yeah, they want me to hire someone from Hollywood, and who knows what they're doing." And he goes, I'm going to think it over, and I'll let you know in a couple of days what I decide. And so I left their office, and now I know that in this little town I live in, there's this business that works on every big
Exactly
Hollywood
thing you
movie.
want. Yep.
Yeah, exactly the thing. I couldn't have dreamed anything that spectacular. And so I really wanted this job, and I was kind of thinking it over and over, like, how do I show? Oh, the last thing that he said to me was, he said, "You're really not qualified to work here." And he said, "The only thing you have going for you is you seem hungry. Are you hungry?" And he kind of looked at me, kind of like, "What's your deal?"
Hmm.
And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm hungry. I'm
I'm
hungry." And then
starving over here. Yeah.
yeah, and so I went home, and I was trying to think, how can I impress on him that I am hungry, that I really want this, that I'm gonna go for it. And how do I show him how hard I'm gonna work? And I was taking out the trash in my apartment, and I threw the trash in the dumpster, and in the bottom of the dumpster, I saw the most perfect thing. I literally dove into the dumpster to get my hands on an old, filthy, disgusting work boot that someone had thrown away, and it was all worn out, and it was covered in oil. And I took that disgusting old workbook, and I brought it back to my apartment, and I put it on a dinner plate, and I took a picture of me with a knife and
Oh,
a fork
really?
cutting into this boot with a big smile on my face. And back then we didn't have computers, so I actually cut and pasted it on with a typewriter. And I said on the front page, it said, "Hey, you asked if I was hungry." And then you open it up, and it's a picture of me eating this disgusting, filthy boot with
Do
a
you
big
have a
smile.
copy of this picture? You need to
Ah,
have a copy of this
that's a
picture.
great question, because in those days we didn't have digital cameras and iPhones. It was shot on film, so I might.
You
But
should have that. I mean,
yeah, that's a great point. I should dig that up. I'm glad you said that. But anyways, at the time, I was just trying to show him that I really was hungry, to infinity and beyond. And so I had that delivered to his office, and his marketing director told me about a month later. She said the second he saw that picture of you eating your boot, you had the job.
yes.
So.
Yes. So, okay, let's get into a little more of that. I know you bring a lot of it up into your books. What was your first big adventure filming?
All of it, every second of it. Before I started flying, I was by myself in the shop because I didn't have technical skills. So they couldn't assign me to one of their big movie cameras, to go onto a Steven Spielberg movie and operate the camera or anything. I didn't know anything about anything. So I'm just in the shop while these guys are all out filming on TV shows and movies. And no one said anything to me. I just looked at the shop, and it looked really messy. It was like the people who work here, they don't have time to clean the shop because they're literally going from one big movie or TV production to the next. They don't get time in the shop. They don't have time. And so like when they come home and they take one of these giant gyro stabilized balls, and try to put it on the shop to work on it, they have to like shove stuff off the bench just to have a place to work on things. That's how messy the shop was. And so I went through that shop, and no one told me to do this, but I just felt, well, this needs to be done. So I just started sweeping up the floor, and that took until about 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I cleaned the floor, the entire shop. And then I went to each workbench and I didn't know what any of that stuff was, but I straightened it out and I could make it neat. So I just cleaned up and organized and straightened up everything so that literally any of the guys could back a van up to the shop. They could take out one of these giant, movie camera systems and set it up, and they could put all the electronics on the bench because the bench is now clean and empty, and they could set everything up and they could work on the electronics and make a repair or whatever needed to be done that day. And the next day, uh, everyone starts coming back into the building, and I'm still there wearing the same clothes I had on yesterday. And you couldn't recognize the place. It didn't look like the same shop. It was so neat and clean. And my supervisor came in, like 9 o'clock in the morning, like everyone else, and he took one look at this place that had been so cleaned, it was unrecognizable, and he just started laughing. And he he just started laughing, and big old smile. He pointed to me with a big old smile on his face, and he said, "That's it. You're going with me on my next movie shoot." And so he was so impressed that I had done this, and no one had told me to. I just worked all night to do something for the guys to make their job easier. And he knew I really, really wanted to work in TV shows and movies, so he just said, "That's it. You're going with me. So you get to come along and see how this equipment works, and you can start to learn."
What was the first trip out?
It was a movie shoot in Miami, and this story is in my book. It's in Help from Above because I get in this helicopter, and I've never done anything like this. I'm just watching my boss, and he's steering the gyro stabilized movie camera for this big Hollywood movie that they're shooting in Miami. And I thought helicopters, just from my perception of them, I thought they'd be really just crazy violent and shaky. And what I experienced was it was much more like sitting in a comfortable chair in your living room. And as this pilot, who was a legendary movie pilot, he just smoothly picked us up. And it wasn't violent like I thought. It wasn't, shaking like crazy. It was like being on a magic carpet. And we would go, this pilot,
Coming out of the crib again.
yeah, very much was. Yeah, just like floating off the ground. And so we float up over the treetops and over the buildings, and in the movie camera, my boss is framing up all the buildings of Miami, and as the buildings are passing through the frame, you see millions of people all at once in this viewfinder of this movie camera. And it's just poetry in motion, just watching millions of people walking around, driving their cars, you know, riding in boats. Uh, the entire city is in front of this camera as we float around and make shots for the movie. And so that was my first time doing it, and it was just a really surreal, magical experience. Um, and I'm glad kids today, can read Help from Above and learn, what I went through, how I got where I am, and that, it's not in any industry, it's not a matter of being the best and the brightest. Um, I'm the dumbest guy in any room I walk into. But the thing is, I just have an attitude of hard work without complaint. And so if that means I stay up all night and clean the shop, I'm gonna do that with a big smile. And when the other guys come into the shop, I'm gonna try and make their day go easier. Whatever I can help them with, I'm gonna do. And
In the
so,
maritime industry, that would be the greatest greenhorn ever.
I mean, I hope, especially with Deadliest Catch, shining a light on the fishing industry, I hope that there are lots of kids, finding their way to the docks, with that kind of a hardworking attitude to just like I'm not here to gripe and complain and cause problems. I'm just here to help you guys, get your job done a little easier today.
What has been your best moment in the air? Your best moment ever in
Best
the
moment in
air?
the air. I mean, this job really has been a dream. Um, I'd honestly have to just look at my calendar and just go from one day to the next because, you know, there's there are no days in that office that aren't absolutely breathtaking, spectacular. I've flown over the World Series. I've flown over the Super Bowls. I've flown on big Hollywood movies, you know, while the movie stars are, driving their fancy cars, which aren't out yet. When we did James Bond, that was a fun one because we were going from country to country working on this James Bond movie. And I was a technician. I wasn't the movie camera operator. So all I did was just take care of the system, set it up, test it, repair it when it broke, and basically make my cameraman look good. And so, um, because I worked so hard at that, these camera guys knew by the time they got in the helicopter to shoot for James Bond, they knew that I had been for weeks testing the equipment, communicating with every department of the movie. By the time my camera guy stepped into the seat to shoot the movie scenes from the helicopter, he knew that I had selected what we call a ground glass, which makes the picture a certain size for that movie. And he knew that I was using the ground glass for that movie, which sets the exact frame lines exactly where he needs to see what's going to be on the movie screen. And I had done all of that while he wasn't even involved. So basically by the time he got there, everything was taken care of
Oh, these guys were loving you. These guys were loving you.
well, I think, there are times where, and I think this was one of those times where I was promoted, which is a big deal to operate the camera because we had so many problems on that movie. There were terrorist attacks in Turkey when we were filming there, and a lot of the schedule had to change. We couldn't film in some places where they wanted to film because stuff was blowing up on the street. And so by the time we got to Azerbaijan to film in the Caspian Sea, the Russians during the Cold War, the Soviet Union built a city on the water. It's in the middle of the Caspian Sea, and it was for oil production and distribution. And it's at the time it was still there. It was abandoned, and falling apart, but at the time it was still there. And so we went to film for James Bond in this city in the middle of the Caspian Sea. And because of all these scheduling problems, my cameraman had to leave. And so in talking to the producers of the movie, instead of saying, okay, here's you got to get this guy from Hollywood and fly him out here and get him into Azerbaijan to do this shot, instead he said, you know what you guys are going to do out in the Caspian Sea is, pretty easy, and Dave can handle it. So just let Dave take my spot and film those scenes. And that was a big deal. But I think the reason that he probably did that was because I was just a really hard worker and I never complained. So
So that was your first time behind the camera, and that's on film somewhere.
so I had been operating the TV cameras for years, but
Mhm.
that was definitely the first big Hollywood movie where I actually steered the camera and did the shots myself. And so, here we are in the former Soviet Union. I mean, we had a Russian pilot on board, and his job was just to be there to talk to the anti-aircraft batteries and tell them not to shoot us down. Um, as
Great.
you,
Excellent.
well, I mean, as you know, if you look at the news today, that's a very contested part of the world, and there have been so many wars that have been fought there for so long. Uh, the Soviet Union was a stabilizing influence because they took all of those countries and put them under the same umbrella. But the Soviet Union had collapsed since then, and so now these several conflicts had broken out, and this they had been fighting here. And so we had a Russian pilot because they didn't speak English. He would call them on the radio, give them our identification and location so that the anti-aircraft batteries could shut down for a minute and let us pass without shooting us down.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have. And so here I am, James Bond. It was Pierce Brosnan. He's driving a BMW, which isn't out yet. It's like next year's model
At that time.
that
Now
they're
it's a
gonna sell.
classic.
Now it's a classic. So right. So he's driving through the oil derricks in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is we were in Baku and the places that we went, there were just oil wells were like trees. Just everywhere. So he's just driving his car between all the oil derricks that are sticking up out of the ground. And we did all the shots that they wanted to do. And the director was happy we were done. And I said, hey, you know what? We have a little bit of film left. Um, would you like to see something? And the director goes, yeah, okay. So I told the pilot, I said, okay, you go over here. Because the pilots for these movie, helicopters, they're all world-class experts in how to move the camera around and how to make the picture look interesting and how to bring things into and out of the frame, while we're looking at something. In this case, it's, James Bond driving his car. I said, okay, let's go over here. And then I'm going to zoom all the way in. And then you climb when it looks right to you. You climb up and you drag all the oil derricks through the frame. And then we'll find James Bond driving his car behind all of that. And so we go back and we do it. And of course, that's the shot they used in the movie. So if you watch James Bond, The World Is Not Enough, you'll see this shot that starts with the frame is filled with like oil equipment, and then it just starts to pull like a curtain down through the frame, and then behind that is this field full of more oil derricks, and then there's a little BMW zipping in between them.
Okay, I know what I'm going to rewatch tonight.
That was actually a good. I enjoyed that movie.
That's what
It's a good James Bond movie.
you're very, very, very well spoken, Dave. Very well spoken.
Well, it's I God bless you. Thank you so much. When we started to talk about me being on your show, it was a little bit daunting because I listened to your show and I just feel like you have a lot of legendary people on your show. So
Well, and my answer to that every time is going to be every person is a center of their own universe, and they are. We all live that way, but we all deserve that. Every person has a story to tell and experience they've been through that no one else has been through. They've been through similar, but not the exact. So I think every person is important. Every story is important. And sharing them makes other people feel better about their own stories. Like you've just given out. Uh, so just in talking about your introduction and your first time, you walked the docks is what you did. You walked the docks. You did the bait is what you did when you were cleaning the shop and doing all the grunt work. It's the same thing, man. You've put in your time. You put in your time and you get rewarded for the effort you put into it.
well, I'm glad you said that because writing some of the stories and help from above, I really had a mind of like what would help kids today who are thinking of what they're going to do with their life and should I go to college? And I mean, whether you're entering the fishing industry or you want to work in television or movies or social media, whatever it is, there really is a lot of work you can just start doing. And so as I travel the world, kids look at these, computerized, electronic, gyro-stabilized cameras that I use for TV shows and movies. And the first question they ask is, "Did you go to school for this?" No, I did not. I was hired off the street with no experience. And they go, "Huh." And then they'll usually ask some form of, "Well, how would I get a job like that?" And I always tell them, it's like whatever you're interested in, um, just start doing it. Just go find the people who do what you want to do and help them. Because yeah, I mean, I'm sure the fishing industry is similar to television in that regard, which is if you just keep showing up and offering to help, you're going to be standing there one day when something needs done. And they're going to look around and they're going to say, "Hey, somebody's got to drive to Idaho and drop off this part. Do you want to drive to Idaho?"
It's funny is the way you just said it. And it's an old saying, and I'll get it wrong, but if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
And so, you, okay, let's just go for different examples. If you want to be the best guitar player in the world, you start playing when you're young and you become Sammy Hagar. You want to become, or whoever your favorite guitar player is here. You've skateboarded your entire life. Tony Hawk, these guys pursued passion and made a living at it, and it's their passion, and they're still involved in those things today, right? So if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, it's funny. Um, I literally started sweeping the floor and I don't maybe I'm just wired this way, but I've loved every job I've ever had. So whether I'm sweeping the floor or I'm, flying over the crab boats on Deadliest Catch, I'm having the time of my life. I'm just happy to be here and
You sound very thankful. You sound
very,
very thankful.
yeah, very thankful. And it's interesting too because I had a lot of stress, figuring out how to work these computerized, gyro-stabilized movie cameras, and they broke a lot. You know, these things had all kinds of failure points as part of their system, and you had to know how to work on electronics. You had to know how to diagnose very complicated electromechanical systems. And I had a lot of stress, and so they're always breaking. And so what I would do is we'd be on a movie, and you know, all of a sudden the camera would put an error code on the screen, and now it won't run the film for the movie. And so I just thought, well, okay, if I'm one of the bosses on the movie, what would I want to know? And so I would rather than try to hide that it was broken, I would get right in touch with them right away, and I would say, okay, this is what's just happened. I don't know why it's saying that, but I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna do a very quick assessment of it, and I'm gonna update you in 30 minutes. And then in 30 minutes, I would update them and I would either tell them what was broken or I would say, okay, now I know this about the problem. So I'm going to call this person. I'm going to check this part on the system. I would explain to them a roadmap of what I was going to do. And, meantime, some of them have hundreds and hundreds of people all waiting. Nobody can move forward to the next location until the helicopter finishes, shooting this shot of the bridge exploding. They can't blow up the bridge yet because they really need the helicopter camera to show it. And, and one of the big movies that I worked on, I was talking to people and they said, wow, the production manager would not stop bragging about you and how nice it was to work with you. And I almost, spit my drink. I said, they said, what? I couldn't believe that on a big movie where we had so many problems with the equipment, that they would have anything but a negative memory of me and the equipment. And they just said, "Oh,
Communication is key, brother.
well, it's interesting. This is my first job, really. And I didn't really know how the world works. I just felt like, oh, this must be terrible that my camera broke, and they must have a terrible memory of all of those locations where we had this and this and this problem. And and here this production manager, so the person I'm reporting to was telling someone at Westcam, "Oh my goodness, Dave was so great. This was an awesome experience. We got, such great results." And I'm thinking, are we talking about the same project?
Right. My stuff
And
was broke the whole
yeah, my
time.
stuff broke a lot. And that was when I started to learn of like, oh, okay, so basically everything breaks and every company probably has stuff going wrong all the time. And so if you're someone who blames the equipment or blames other people and makes a big stink about it, they probably will have a bad memory of it. But if you help them through the problems and don't ever leave them hanging, like not knowing what's happening or what's going to happen next, if you give them information, even when things are going wrong, at least they can make decisions, and that probably takes stress off of their shoulders. But I learned that the hard way. I, I didn't go to college for this, and I don't, I didn't really know.
But yet here you are as one of the best in the business.
Well, it was very simple things I think that really helped me. One time, this was typical in those days. We were so buried with work. One of our coordinators had sent our helicopter camera to the wrong state. And so here these guys are trying to make this commercial, and I think it was in the Grand Canyon. And
Wait, did you say sent the helicopter to the wrong state?
no, our
The
camera. So
camera.
the
Okay.
helicopter's there and there's no camera for it because our system got shipped to the wrong location. And so, I'm one of the low guys on the totem pole. And I hear them talking about this in the office. Well, somebody's got to jump in a truck with this other camera system. I mean, we only had like three to take care of the whole world. We had like three of them for movies and commercials. And someone's got to jump in the truck, and the truck has to drive around the clock to get there just to try and get something for this commercial. That's okay. So I'll go. So I climbed in the back of the truck, and it was a box truck, and so there's no seats in there. It's just the equipment cases. And so they pulled the roll up door down behind me, so now I'm locked inside this box. And the truck drove all night to get to the filming location. We arrive, they roll up the door. I come out with the cases, and the cases were about 1,000 pounds. These were big, heavy shipping cases full of giant parts for these gyro stabilized cameras. And we get it all out, and I build it onto the helicopter, and it broke immediately. I turn the camera on, it immediately breaks, and there's like a little bit of smoke coming out of it. I said, okay, so now it's probably 7 or 8 o'clock at night. We're going to try and get this camera ready so they can film tomorrow. They lost a day or two in the middle of this shipping mess. And so I get my tools out and I start soldering wires, and I work all night to get the camera running and ready for this commercial. And I have just enough time to hop in a van and drive back to the hotel. I haven't been in my hotel room yet. I walk in, I take a shower, I put on clean clothes, and I walk out of my room and I walk straight through the lobby and I step into the production van with 15 passenger seats, full of all the crew that's going out to location. So they're all walking out after sleeping all night and having a nice dinner and a nice breakfast, and
Oh
they
yeah.
they walk out together in the van. I walk out and I get right in with them, and the van takes off and we drive to location. And we film all day, and they get their shots. And and this was one of those where I knew, my company was on everybody's dirty list because of this foul up that we had done by shipping the equipment to completely the wrong place, and setting the entire production behind schedule. And so I knew we were on the S list. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. The producer of the commercial walks over. It's just me. I'm just sitting, the helicopter's out flying and I'm waiting for them to come back so I can reload the film. And he walks over and he goes, "Hey, Dave, we have a number of positions in our company and we have people who do this. There's guys that do special effects. You ever think you want to do anything like that?" And I said, "No, no, thank you. I like my job." And he goes, "Okay, well, we have these other departments and we have guys who do this and this." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you. I love my job. I don't, but thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I'm very flattered." And he walks away. And later on, the helicopter comes in and land, and my boss, the cameraman, he's there, and he's been through all this too. He was stuck on location with no camera to film with because we had screwed up the shipping. And I said, "You're not going to believe the conversation I had with the producer." And I'm not someone the producer normally talks to. And and he says, "Okay, what did they say?" And I said, "Well, he kept trying to offer me different jobs in their company." And I said, "I don't understand this. Aren't they mad at me? Aren't they mad at the company because of the foul up we did?" And he just laughs and he goes, "Dave, everything in this commercial production breaks. Everything fails out here. We're in the middle of a desert. The cameras break, the trucks break. You know, we have every day
The
we have
actors break.
the
It's too
humans
hot.
break. It's too hot. He goes, every day there's things going wrong." And he kind of smiles and he goes, "They noticed that you worked all night and you had traveled all night in the back of that truck, and then you worked, to build the camera, then you worked all night to fix the camera, and then you came back." So now we're into, I don't know, the 30-hour mark, 35-hour mark of this job. And he goes, "You came out and you worked all day." And he goes, "You didn't say a word to anyone."
No
And
complaints.
I thought about it and I thought, "Oh, okay. That's a good point, actually. I never thought of it from that point. I just thought everybody was mad because our camera didn't show up when it was supposed to. And the way he explained it was, well, everything gets messed up around here. It's just, either you can make a stink about it and you can, point fingers at the guy who shipped the camera to the wrong state and made that error, which caused all this grief, or you can just get in the back of the truck and go to work and not."
Ooh, that's the
And
heading of this episode. Get in the back of the truck. Back to the back of the truck, though. Uh, in the back of the truck, was there a bathroom moment? This just keeps popping in my head. Did you find yourself having to go to the bathroom at all? You couldn't tell them you're back
it
there,
was a
right? Or
it was a funny situation. I mean, I survived it. I made it work. I guess that was really the bottom line was,
okay.
the drivers had to drive all night. Like it's like we're under the gun, right? It's like the drivers know we got to drive all night. I know what we're doing. I understand the problem we're trying to help with here. Not solve, but just make it a little bit better. And so we all just, did our part to get the camera stuff there and make it work out. And so um so this cameraman I was working for, he was right. I hadn't said a word to anyone, not so much as "Oh man, this, they're just watching me." After getting the camera built, they're just watching me as the sun has gone down and it's getting later and later, and I'm in there with my soldering iron and smoke's coming out because I'm melting the solder to fix the wires that are broken. They're just watching me do all that, but I never took a minute to say, "Oh, this sucks," or "This is shouldn't be like this," or
Damn, Dave,
why.
you're a good man, Dave. I can just see it. I can hear it. I can feel it.
Well, God bless you. I'm simple. So, and I learned, from those experiences, I started to understand, why these producers and production managers hire certain people. And that has, I think, a very big part of it is, if you're a kid in high school and you're thinking of working on TV shows or movies, you might have an idea in your head that, wow, these are $1 million productions. They have the best equipment available, the brightest minds, the smartest people doing every job. Like, this must just be a well-oiled machine. And the reality that I discovered was very much the opposite. It was a almost a complete S show of every kind of problem. And I think from one movie or one commercial to the next, I think to maintain some quality of life, the people in charge try to hire people that will at least roll with the punches and not make everyone miserable because of whatever went wrong that day.
Same thing is on a boat. Same thing is on a boat. I think any career you choose, any career has the same difficulties, the same struggles, the same challenges. Obviously, some are more dangerous than others. Yours is actually a very dangerous occupation, which brings me to my next question, Dave. What was your worst time in the air?
Um, One of the worst things I've ever done in the helicopter was on Deadliest Catch. And this story is in Help from Above. There's a chapter called Lost in a Storm. And at this point, I've been flying for about 20 years, and working on TV shows and movies. And we went offshore to film the some of the boats from Deadliest Catch, and we left Dutch Harbor. The thing that people probably don't have a clear sense of watching Deadliest Catch on TV is the remoteness of it and the fact that you're about 1,000 miles, in Dutch Harbor to the nearest major human city.
And
And
hospital,
hospital. There's just nothing out there. This
actually, and
is so
dentist.
empty. Yeah, it's well, I hope they have a dentist in Dutch Harbor, but you're not wrong. This
Like Wednesdays, like
Oh,
literally like one day a week. Otherwise, you got to fly to Anchorage. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that's a very, like, you might as well be on the moon. And so we come out of Dutch Harbor and we push offshore in our little helicopter, and we're flying over the boats on Deadliest Catch. And I had been flying enough to know how dangerous that was. Like, you only need one thing to go wrong and you're just dead in that scenario. And so I was a very nervous flyer at night over the Bering Sea. And so we're filming the boats and we happen to be over the Wizard. And I notice that the the sodium lights on the Wizard are projecting in front of the boat like the bat signal. It's this beam, which tells me, okay, so the reason I can see that beam is because there's so much moisture and mist and fog and snow that that's what's lighting up into this column of light in front of the boat. And this was the first time that night, because I'd always be looking over my shoulder out the windows to see where the lights of Dutch Harbor, which way is home. Because I know if my pilot can see those lights, we can stay upright and not crash into the ocean. And so I see that the wizard's lights are projecting in front of the boat, and it just made me nervous. And I asked the pilot, I said, "How much time do you have left?" And he goes, "I got about 10 minutes, and then we got to go back for fuel." And I said, "Let's go now. Let's just go." And he goes, "Oh, okay." So, and then he says a phrase that I will never forget. He goes, "Let me see if I can figure out which way is back to town." And that was basically a raging three alarm fire in my head when he said that, because that's death. If he can't see which way we have to go to get back to Dutch Harbor, we're dead. And as I look out my windows, I'm in the back of the helicopter, and I now all of a sudden I can't see town. It's just every direction I look is just pitch black darkness. And so I thought, oh boy, we are so effed right now. Like I'm taking my last breaths because he's going to now try to navigate into this storm. And unbeknownst to us, we were flying over our boat, the Wizard, and so we can see lights around the boat. We know which way is up. We have a vertical reference, and we're not going to, just tumble into the ocean. And while we were doing that, a storm had moved into the area, which we couldn't see because it was dark. It's at night. And now, only thing we know is we're just cut off. We're isolated. We're out in this black ink. We cannot see which way the island is or which way the town is. And so I knew my pilot was going to really struggle to try and not, try and not tumble into the ocean and hopefully find his way back to town. And so I turned all of my equipment off. I even pulled the circuit breaker that powers everything because the power switch has a light on it, which which it helps you to find the switch. And I didn't want that light to distract the pilot. So I pulled the breaker, killed the power to all of my equipment. And my director is sitting in the front seat next to the pilot, and he says, "Oh, I lost my picture on my monitor, Dave." I said, "Yeah, it's not coming back on either." And so we're flying for about 10 minutes, and I'm looking over the pilot's shoulder, and I'm hoping to see lights so I know he can keep us safely flying and not tumble into the ocean. And I can't see lights. I don't see anything. And I said, "What are you flying to?" And he goes, "I don't know. I thought it was the lights of town, but now I'm not sure." And that's it. This is now, I know we're about to die because there've been a lot of famous
Well,
accidents, including Kobe Bryant. This is what happened to Kobe Bryant was his pilot lost references, and he didn't know which way was up, so he tumbled the aircraft into the earth. And we're about to do that in the Bering Sea, where no one knows where we are, and we're just in the middle of a freezing ocean. Like we're all dead. And so I heard him say that. I don't know man, I thought that was town, but now I don't know. And you know, I just, I said, we can't do this anymore. I said, turn around right now and go back to our boats. And yeah, I'm just a backseat cameraman. So, my pilot is a very experienced helicopter pilot. He knows how to fly, he knows how to navigate. These are things I don't know how to do. So he had every right to say, "Shut up, Dave. I'm busy. Leave me alone. Don't distract me." But he didn't. As soon as I said it, he turned us on a dime and started flying back to the Wizard. And we had a number of boats in the area. And I told the director, because he had the Marine Band radio, I said, "Call the boats, tell them to turn on all of their lights and to steam towards Dutch Harbor." And I told the pilot, I said, "Look at those boats when they get their lights on. That's going to give you your heading. So now you know which direction to go to get back to Dutch Harbor." And so the director says, "Well, which boat should I call?" And the pilot panicked. He goes, "Effing pick one." So he he was just as panicked as I was. And so I was trying to be polite to our director. I didn't want to, scare him or anything, but we were really in a bad situation. And so the director grabs the radio. He goes, "Hey, everybody, turn on all your lights and steam towards Dutch Harbor." And I'll never forget the voice of Sig Hansen. He's just such a smart captain. He comes right back immediately. He goes, "Okay, get behind me and follow me. I'll take you through this storm. Follow me. I'm gonna take you all the way to that dock." And the communications are going through our director. He's the only one with a Marine band radio that can talk to the boats. And the pilot says, "Tell him we can't. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough fuel in our tank." So the obvious problem is at the speed of the Northwestern,
Seven or
uh,
8.5 knots. Yeah.
we're going to run out of fuel before we ever get near Dutch Harbor. And so the director tells him, relays to Captain Sig, says, "Oh, we can't follow you. We don't have enough gas." And Captain Sig he's such a smart skipper. He's a real problem solver. Like it's here he is sitting in his comfortable boat with the heat on, and and he has figured out that we left 10 minutes ago to refuel. And now we're back with the boats. That's not good because he knows we're going to run out of fuel. And he knows that we have now basically a whiteout blizzard. It's in the dark, but we have a blizzard between us and the island. And so he understands our predicament. And he goes, "Okay," he goes, "follow my heading. Push out on my heading that will take you between the mountains to town." And the second he said that, the pilot pushed forward on the stick and we just careened, following the lead of the Northwestern, using their lights. We followed that heading straight into the storm. And as we left the boats behind, we just basically entered pure darkness. And it was a it was a just what I would say about that predicament is most people don't survive that. Most people who enter those conditions that we were flying in are never seen or heard from again. And but we had just enough help from our friends to use the light of the Northwestern in his direction. We had just enough help from our friends to enter the storm and keep the helicopter level and make it all the way until the pilot could see the lights of town without hitting the mountains. And so we got back. Um, the the behind the scenes film crew raced out to the helicopter hangar to, tell the story about how we had almost died in the storm. And we pushed the helicopter into the hangar and we were done flying that night.
Oh, no
And
refuel and go back out. You were
no,
finished.
we couldn't, not in those conditions. And so they did their filming and they left, and now it's just me and the pilot in the hangar by ourselves. And so I walked over to him and I said, "Okay, when we turned around, where do you think we were heading?" And he kind of scratched his head a little bit and he said, "You know what? I think we were heading offshore." So by the time we basically uh we would have followed that heading going away from town accidentally into the storm until he just completely lost references and we just tumbled into the ocean. So I'm only alive today because he turned around, went back to our boats, even though he knew we might run out of fuel by choosing to go back to our boats. But he did that, and then Captain C gave us a heading and just enough guidance to get us home. But if everyone hadn't have done all of those things in just the right way, we all would have died, and we would have been in the news just like Kobe Bryant or JFK Jr. Um, just just another statistic of
E-
the
e-
Bering Sea.
Everybody is a spoke in the wheel, right? It takes many spokes to keep the wheel going.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's and then people had kind of gave me a hard time over the years of like, well, why didn't you blame the pilot for this or that? And I just had a very strong sense of, you know, this was a very challenging condition to fly a helicopter into, and he was making a good faith effort to make everyone happy and do what the filming we were supposed to do. And it was an unusual circumstance, and so there really was no checklist for that. And I gave him credit because he could have told me to shut up when I told him to potentially burn up the last of our fuel to go back to the boats. But he didn't. He listened, and he worked with the people he had on board to get done what we had to get done to get home alive. And so I never faulted him. And I just felt like that was uh, it just wasn't something to blame on anyone. It was just okay. Thank God the pilot and the director and Captain Sig, everybody did everything in just the right way to salvage a really deadly scenario and get us all home alive. And so that's all I can really think about is just, thank God everyone did just the right thing at just the right time to get us home. And and we stopped after that. We stopped flying at night over the Bering Sea. It was just too dangerous.
Yeah, as someone who has flown a lot myself as pilot in command, you think that you're real comfortable until you have one event and you can be shaken to your core. Even on a nice sunny day, you can be shaken to your core. Um, it's just how it works.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a saying. They say it's better to be on the ground wishing you're flying than to be in the air and wishing you were on the ground.
As a pilot, you want your takeoff numbers to match your landing numbers.
That's right.
You want to
Yeah,
keep
so
those, you want to keep those even.
yeah, so I've had enough experiences of being in the air wishing I was on the ground. Uh, and and it also I learned from that how important it really is, to have help from everyone to get home alive sometimes. And it's nothing to take for granted.
It's funny. Help from Above. Excellent, excellent book. Maybe your third one is Help from All. It doesn't it takes everyone in your life to make you where you're at. Nobody does it alone. Nobody does it alone.
Well, it's interesting. I've had people. One of the big bosses on Deadliest Catch, we were talking about the book one day, and he goes, "Man, I didn't know that stuff was going to be in your book." And so there's definitely a lot of mistakes that I've made in my life and career, and a lot of things I did wrong are in the book. And there's definitely, well, I'll tell you, the book was originally the series of books was originally called Worth Fighting For, and my buddy is a documentary producer, and we've been working on a documentary about some stuff I did in my life. And he was looking at the book one day when I was writing it, and he said, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but you need to call this book Help from Above." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so that became the series of books, Help from Above.
Yeah, which is again, I encourage everyone. And you know what? You've been so great. I forgot to mention our sponsor here. Extra Tough is who sponsors Galley Stories. So appreciate their support. Dave, I appreciate you taking the time today. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Final thoughts. No, I'm just absolutely honored. I feel like you've had so many legendary men on your show. I'm just absolutely thrilled to have an opportunity to be on your show and to share some stories. And my last thought is everyone picks on the new generation of kids. Oh, they're lazy, short attention span, entitled, privileged, don't know how to do anything. And I completely disagree. I think that the kids today are just like us when we were kids. It's just they've grown up in a different world than what we grew up in. And so they think differently. They have different goals. But I think other than that, they're just like us. And so I think it's important for people our age to take time and do what your show is all about, which is, tell the stories that no one knows so that the kids today can hear, oh, okay, so maybe I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room to captain a fishing boat. Or maybe I don't need to be the best and brightest, to work on the TV crew of the Super Bowl. Maybe I just need to show up on time, work hard, and not complain.
And you can have an effect on someone else's life. I don't believe Sig went to college, but he saved your life.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
follow
I
me?
never I never thought of it that way. That's a great point.
I mean, you don't have to be the most educated, and getting your degree in Spanish or whatever it is, right? It's not going to make you. What's going to make you great is communication, and honesty, and being straightforward about it. That's my thought. If you can do those things, be even if it's bad news, just give it to me. Just give it to me, um, and we'll work with it. I'll help you. You help me.
Amen.
Help your neighbor, right?
That's right. Let's try and make this better, not make whatever's going wrong today. Let's just try and make it better and get everyone through it as best we can and not make it any worse than it needs to be.
Well, Dave, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today to share your story. So I'm going to ask you. I'll buy a book to give out to one of our listeners that writes in. But I'm going to ask you to autograph it.
Oh, I would be thrilled. Let's do it.
So let's do it. So if you guys would like a copy of Dave's book, send in your email telling me why. And I'll send you back a link of how to get it, and two, the one that Dave selects, we will send out a personalized autograph book. Sound good, Dave?
Oh, you got it. That's a great idea. Let's do it.
Okay. Excellent. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to us today. And again, thanks to Extra Tough, who I didn't mention enough this episode. They help us carry through.
Well, I'm glad Extra Tough sponsors your show because I wear Extra Tough every day, all day long. I have the shorter version. It's not like a boot that goes up to your knee. It's more like a looks more like the shape of a basketball shoe. So these things are the most comfortable things that I put on my feet. And as soon as I wake up in the morning, whether I'm inside or if gotta go outside my house, they're waterproof. And I live in a cloud forest, so it's always wet outside. And these things are so comfortable. I just leave them on because when I'm inside the house, they're like slippers. They're so soft and comfortable and lightweight. Um, I literally wear these things every day, all day long. It's just my favorite things to have on my feet. So I'm glad they're
Wow.
sponsoring your show.
Wow, that's very cool. What a small world, man. And this is not planned or anything. So that's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible.
Now I kind of lit up when you mentioned them as your sponsor. I thought, oh man, that's my
It's a
favorite
it
thing to wear on my feet.
it's a big deal, man. They've been gracious, very gracious. And obviously a small one man rodeo like I'm running is going out to the East Coast to record the lobster fishermen and stuff. There's not a budget for that, right? So normally my wife just goes, "Where are we going on vacation this year that's near people that fish?" Right? Because we fly there, we do our vacation, and then I find recordings to do
Oh wow.
while I'm there. That's how the out of state and other fishery podcasts generally happen. So yeah, no, it's great to have that support.
Yeah,
But
I'm tickled that Extra Tough is supporting your show. I think the way you go around and get guys to publicly tell their stories in a way that helps the future generations, I think is really important work. So, I'm honestly glad Extra Tough has got on board with you and is helping you to do that stuff.
I love the new generation coming in, and normally I end with what do you suggest about the new generation? But the reason I got into it was to capture the old stories, right? It's just like you said, the kids today don't know. Maybe there should be a class in school about kick the can at 5 p.m., to show you how to play kick the can until it gets dark. Things that we did that kind of built us into who we are today. But you don't know those stories now because you're watching TikToks and Instagram, and they're smart kids. There's a lot of potential here. You just got to give them some of the knowledge.
Oh, I'm a big fan of the next generation. I think they're no less than we ever were. It's just because they live in a comfortable world, it's always just assumed that they're lazy and dumb and and don't want to work. And I just think that they've grown up in a different world and they're very smart about it. And what they really need is guidance, whether it's kids who want to get into fishing, to have someone to take them under their wing and teach them how to work. It's not something that comes naturally to most people. But if you have someone who can be tough on you and teach you how to work, that's worth doing. And the kids today are no less capable than we were when we were that age. It's just they need someone, like you said, to tell them the stories and tell them what it really is like out in the world and whatever career they want to get into, and just teach them to do a good job. Um, that's a really important thing. And I was very fortunate to have, in a lot of ways, when I was younger, my dad took me um, when I was 12 years old. He dragged me out of bed to go work in his commercial kitchen. And it was hot and it was messy and dirty, and he was meaner to me than any of his workers. But he basically taught me the value of doing a good job and the value of looking carefully to see if there's any way I could do a better job. He really instilled that in me. And I think if we do that with the next generation, the world is going to always be a better place.
I think if our next generation gets 1/3 of your passion and commitment, Dave, we'll just be just fine. All
Well,
right.
God bless you. I'm a big fan of what you're doing on this
God,
podcast.
God bless you too, Dave. All right, guys. Once again, we'll end it here. And extra tough moment. Wow. All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Galley Stories. We hope you like what the net brought in. Please leave us a review on iTunes. Whether you like it or not, we're not fishing for compliments. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter too, and reach out to us at galleystories@gmail.com.